Size 12 is Not Fat and Size 14 is Not Fat Either are the first two books in the Heather Wells series by Meg Cabot, author of several popular book series such as The Princess Diaries and All American Girl. From the cover, you may be forgiven for thinking this book follows in a similar ilk. It looks like a chick lit. Sounds like it too. But it's a murder mystery! It follows Heather Wells, who found fame as a child pop star a la Hilary Duff, Vanessa Hudgens, Jonas Brothers, etc. However, fame didn't follow her into her adult life. After losing her musical contract, fiancé, money, mother and agent, Heather Wells left that world behind her, gained a few pounds, moved into the top floor flat of her ex-fiancé's dishy brother's brownstone, and found a new job at a hall of residence at the local uni. Hey, ain't there supposed to be some murder in this book, you may be thinking? Yes. Unfortunately, it's not long before the first stiff shows up. A student found at the bottom of a lift shaft. The staff and police chalk it up to a tragic accident after elevator surfing gone wrong, but Heather feels differently. The girl was not the type to partake in dangerous sports, and when another girl is found dead in the same way, Heather takes it upon herself to investigate before more of her students suffer the same fate. I am a sucker for the unlikely detective, which is why I tend to go for books like The Thursday Murder Club, the Canon Clement mysteries, The Murder Most Unladylike, over your police procedurals, and prefer Marple to Poirot, which is why I picked up this. So, I have to give it a tick for drawing my attention in the first place, even if it is for purely subjective reasons. I enjoy interesting perspectives, and I did like the one Meg Cabot presents in this, the ex-pop star turned residential advisor? I don't remember what the job title is exactly. Sometimes she is recognised, sometimes she isn't. Trying to cut ties with the past world, but struggling because all of her formative years were steeped in that past world. I also like the little excerpts from song lyrics that open every chapter. I enjoy little added extras like that. It just shows the author has put in a bit of extra effort. The humour is mostly alright. It's juvenile and certainly not to everyone's taste, and probably would have worked better in a YA or teenage book, but it's not terrible. Then again, my sense of humour is terrible, so I honestly wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people disagreed with me. I didn't find this laugh out loud funny, but some running jokes got a little bit of a smile. It definitely would have been more palatable and successful if this book hadn't been for adults. Heather as the main character is okay. I like that she's quite active and does take the initiative in looking for clues and confronting her own investigation, especially in the first book, Size 12 is Not Fat. The second book, well, we'll get to it. The mystery itself is alright. It's ridiculous, but of course it is. This setup does not beget a serious mystery, but that's alright. I don't mind a silly mystery. I like a lot of the side characters. The ex-fiancé, whose name I cannot remember, is a ridiculous caricature of the boy band member, down to the stupid clothes and ridiculous haircut. Especially in the second one. He's alright in the first one, but in Size 14 is Not Fat Either. He was probably my favourite part. There's also Magda, who's from, I think, Guatemala, and is this eccentric cafeteria worker. And there's a few others as well, and I enjoyed them and their interactions, so I think she did a good job with the side characters. Unfortunately, it wasn't all good. As you can imagine from the title, there is a lot in this book about size politics. Now, this book is American, and therefore the sizes refer to American sizes, not UK sizes. There is a helpful note in this book to remind me that a US 12 is more akin to UK 14 to 16, though I think nowadays it's just 16. Usually you add 4 for the UK equivalent. I don't have a problem with characters discussing size and weight, obviously. I don't have a problem with characters being unhappy with their weight. A lot of people are. It's part of the human condition to be always comparing ourselves to others. It's not necessarily healthy, but it's natural to do that. What I do have a problem with, however, is the constant dragging of thin people. I was tricked into thinking this book wasn't going to be like that at first. The first scene is about vanity sizing and how it can screw over people of all sizes because it's stupid. But after that, it's highly negative about thin people, about how they only eat lettuce and they're all vapid airheads, and it's frustrating and kind of insulting. And it's not much better on the other end either. For a book that people probably thought was going to be empowering for plus-size girls, even though 12 isn't really that plus-sized, it goes on a lot about food. I mean, Heather thinks about food all the time. Fried chicken and chocolate and cream cheese bagels and Dove bars. I admit I had to go and Google Dove bars. We don't have them in England, and at first I thought they were talking about bars of Dove soap, which doesn't sound delicious. Turns out Dove bars are like Magnums. Also, a side note, one of Heather's arguments is that a 12 is the size of the average American woman, and therefore shouldn't be considered fat. This is flawed thinking, as the two are not mutually exclusive, and it does make me question her ability to use logic and solve puzzles. But don't worry, the villain points out the exact same flaw in her thinking, so I guess I'm on the same level as a murderer. Yay! There is a thread of romance, and by romance I mean Heather constantly thirsts over Cooper, who is the ex-fiance's brother. She lives on the top floor of his brownstone rent-free in return for doing his receipts for his private investigator agency. Cooper doesn't show any signs of fancying her back, which makes the romance quite difficult to get behind. Also, he's a grumpy bastard for a lot of this, telling Heather off and not believing her, and I don't really get what she sees in him, apart from being tall and handsome.
What else is there?
In the second book, there's a subplot, sort of one of the students fancying Heather, which, you know, fine, students get crushes on staff sometimes. It happens. But the lines were blurred between staff and students, and it was a bit off-putting. I have worked in schools, and it is nice to be able to talk with students on a more chill level, as it were, but you can't be friends with them because that's inappropriate. And yeah, there were elements in the blurring of that professional division between the two which made me uncomfortable, especially in the second book. And in general, the second book is much, much worse than the first. It made sense that Heather was investigating the murders in the first one because she was the only one who thought they were murders. Everyone else, police included, thought they were accidents. But in the second one, a cheerleader's head turns up in a cooking pot. That ain't no accident. The police are investigating, so Heather investigating as well is very forced and unnatural. And I get it. It's difficult when you're writing about amateur sleuths to keep them relevant to the mystery. It's alright if you're writing a police procedural when it's literally the main character's job to investigate crimes. But an amateur sleuth? If you're doing a Poirot or Sherlock Holmes, you're alright because they're consultants brought in to help in a professional capacity. But what about the others? With every book in the series, the suspension of disbelief is harder to maintain. Most of us are lucky, or unlucky, to become embroiled in one murder investigation in our lives, let alone several. Robin Stevens, who wrote the Murder Most Unladylike series, got around this by having each book take place in a new setting. The first is at the school, but after that we get a manor, a train, Cambridge, Hong Kong, a riverboat, London, so the reader only needs to suspend their disbelief for the idea that these characters keep finding murder, not that all these murders take place at a quaint boarding school in the 1930s, which would be more of a stretch. I can't speak for other books in the series, but here, in these two, the murders both take place in the specific hall of residence at this uni within a few months, I think. It can be done, but it's difficult, and I don't think the writing or world building is successful enough to distract us from the unlikelihood of the events. And it really is just stupid. I mean, not only is Heather's involvement very forced, but she makes stupid decisions in her investigation, and the solution is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever read. I mean, the solution for the first mystery is kind of silly too, but the second, the only saving grace in that book is the ex-fiancé and his skis. And in general, the writing is just kind of sucky. It's difficult to follow and full of badly constructed sentences. It just wasn't good. And I'm probably being harsher on it because this is an adult book with swearing and drugs and sex references. If it was YA or teen, I might have been kinder. Not Meg's best work, I don't think, anyway. I remember having one of the Princess Diary books as a child, and I vaguely remember reading it, but I honestly don't recall that much about it. Maybe they all suck worse than this, but I doubt it, as I can see her writing style being far better suited to frothy teen lit than crime. I suppose if you really like Meg Cabot's work, then you could give this a go. You might enjoy it more than me. Will I read the rest of the books in the series? Well, considering these only took me less than a day to read each of them, I might check them out, if only to find out whether or not Heather finally makes her musical comeback and convinces Cooper to have a likeable personality. That's all for now. See you next time.